And hello, and welcome back to Trails of Cold Steel 4. No, not that one. Sorry, Trails into Reverie. So, basically, my curiosity got the better of me, and I went back and actually looked at some of the... Cold Steel 4 ending stuff, because I was like, fuck, I feel like I need to remember some of this. And I don't remember a lot of it well, still. But it did remind me of a few things that I feel are important. So basically, I ended up looking at the Grandmaster scene at the very end. Yes, that character is the Grandmaster. I thought I recognized that design. So that is the Grandmaster, implying that the Grandmaster is leading or holding the threads of fate in some form. There's also... I also looked at the Rufus scene, the Rufus rivalry scene. The Rufus part specifically, the rest not really. I don't feel like there's much there outside of, like, where his aspirations were. I didn't end up looking at the scene that they keep referencing for Rufus saying that stuff at the end. But he did seem totally defeated, and he did seem to accept the idea that he was going about it the wrong way, at the very least. I'm not sure we got anything to indicate that he actually gave up on his, aspirations. But it also seemed like it would be, like, his last chance to really legitimately do that, right? So, other than that, I also went and looked, probably most notably, at the Mick I Have a Silly Name fight. Gotta love McBurn. The gift that keeps on giving. And the whole, like, divergent laws, other worlds, outside, like, you can't, like, travel past the edge of the world sort of thing going on, and holy fuck, I forgot about how significant that was. Oh my fucking goodness. Where, like, this world, like, the whole idea that divergent laws are, like, this world has a set of rules that it works by, and just other stuff getting in will break those rules. From, like, other worlds and that sort of stuff. So, I feel like that's what I was, like, remembering when I was, like, thinking about, oh, like, things aren't quite right, things aren't quite the same. I almost wonder if it might have to do with other worlds and stuff like that. Influences of that, if, like, you took the pure McBurn elements of it. So, I forget if the curse itself was a divergent law element. I didn't go check that. But there's a lot of discussion of sort of, like, replicating the effects of the curse here. So I almost wonder if, like, via the method, like, of McBurn showing up or all that other stuff, you could recreate the curse on that concept. The big thing was, like, McBurn was, like, a demon that fused with his human self, and it just sort of became... basically, the big thing that stood out to me in terms of what's going on here is this idea that it feels like there is, like, alternate versions of people in these other worlds that work either by different laws or something else of that nature. Or at the very minimum, you have, like, a demon version of all that. I don't remember what theorizing I did during Cold Steel 4, but I'm also a bit partial because we have, like, the various planes. Was it 7 planes? 7's just a nice number. Sorry, cough there. Like, you have the various planes, like, in the Septim Church religion and that sort of stuff, where you could have just, like, I am sort of partial. It's sort of just grabbing from, like, a different series as a concept, but, like, if you've ever played Final Fantasy XIV, there is a concept in that, where you have a bunch of different worlds, and how those worlds exist is like a cracked mirror, where all the people exist in each of these worlds, but they're, like, their soul has been split between, like, these, like, 13 versions, who then go on to create their own independent history going forward. And all these different worlds have, like, their souls split between them, and they can merge at points. And maybe that's a bit far, but it does feel like that could... If you did something to basically merge in alternative versions, whether they're demonic versions or otherwise, versions of people, if in part even, in order to basically shift who they are. Don't make them an entirely different person, but shift who they are enough to make them into... to change history, to change, like, say, Rufus into an alternative version of himself, that sort of thing. To change all these EBF fighters into alternative versions of themselves that have all these divergent powers that are able to overwhelm other people. Maybe? Then you also have the fact that we have, like, this, like, computer system shit going on here for, like...
Connecting to Reverie Garden.
Additional information concerning advocated conduct is available. Visitors are advised to conduct themselves in such a manner that better allow the Reverie corridor to fulfill its intended purpose. A series of criteria has been devised to effectively administer this process, with remuneration provided for successfully completing said criteria. I'm not having any easier of a time understanding these explanations. You could have just said, I don't get it. I suppose the short of it is that it'll be judging us based on a set of criteria and rewarding us for meeting that criteria. In that case, I guess we'll just have to do what we can to live up to expectations. Reverie points in liberation rank. Okay. Got it. Yeah, rank will increase, so it's that typical thing, but... Oh, we get to report it.
Confirming rank points accumulated.
Okay, so what we're saying is that...
Liberation rank unchanged.
So the thing against Rufus didn't count. Even okay, I apparently got really close to his threshold, but I didn't get his threshold. I don't know how else to explain it, basically. I don't care anymore. Thesis ring. A lot of these sound newish. Solomon, interesting. That's interesting as a place to report it. With that in mind, this whole, like, computer coming in to basically, like, remove us from reality. I almost wonder if this, like, computerized voice is supposed to be Eidos. That would be my, like, current theory. Like, literally, I could imagine that the point of Eidos' laws and whatnot is not that we're, like, living in a simulation or anything like that, but we're living in a world that's been constructed to basically keep us safe in some form. To basically shield us from the dangers of all the other worlds that are out there. To shield us from the demons, to shield us from all this. This is part of what the Grandmaster said in the thing that I went back and watched in Cold Steel 4 for that very ending scene. Where the world was going to end in 3 years, I think she said. And return to Primordial. Which, when I went back and watched the McBurn thing, his thing was called Primordial Flame. So presumably it would be 3 years until the world would basically lose its protection from all this other shit that's out there. That sort of thing is sort of what I'm interpreting it as. Presumably her quote-unquote eternal recurrence plan and the whole concept of what an Ouroboros is, which is basically snake eating its own tail, which implies cycles and all that sort of stuff, would make me feel, and this is probably man, I'm coughing a bit right now, would probably make me feel like the idea is that Eidos is like a computer system or some technological system in some form that was set up to basically shield people from all those worlds outside in some form. This feels like I'm doing my Cold Steel 4, like, spoiler talk that I never did it right now. Fuck, I might make this its own episode if I go on long enough. I still have notes on my phone for, like, stuff from the Cold Steel 4. But yeah, okay. So my theory is that Eidos, especially now that we have this, sort of implying that there is some outside of causality sort of system that's meant to try to bring people in who can get things back on track and try to undo the damages of other stuff. My guess is based on the fact that it's eternal recurrence in Ouroboros, is that the idea is that Eidos is sort of a self-sustaining system, and it's not really like a goddess or even just like a person at that point. And then via that, Ouroboros and the Grandmaster are people that are actual people that understand how this works and understands the limitations of it. So my guess would be that their ultimate goal through all of this would be to this eternal recurrence is basically acknowledging that the world is being protected via all this. The world is coming to an end. Via some method, maybe the technological revolution is going to bring us to a point where we sort of, just by the nature of humanity progressing, we get to a point where we sort of force our way out and we bring doom upon ourselves. Eidos as a system is not set up to stop that. So Ouroboros' plan is basically to stop us from ever getting to a either one, to literally reset the world back to what it was before, or to regress technology to a point that we cannot actually do that again. And the technology thing makes a lot of sense because we have literally the concept of artifacts and previous civilizations in this world, right? So, I guess that's my theory. That actually sums it up pretty, briefly. Legitimately, the world's on a crash course for ending just because my guess would be technology. Based on, I think that's actually a fairly good guess on the basis of the fact that we have those artifacts and we have, what the big change has been over the course of the series since the first game has been. The world has been, just industrial revolutionary ing it up, right? Over the course of these games, the technology has jumped so ridiculously far forward in comparison to that. 3 more years is probably pretty quick for getting to a point where we could, match the ancients and the artifact level people that we have in our histories by any means, considering artifacts are still considered an enigma to us. But at the same time, you could also potentially consider the idea of the idea that maybe the artifacts came from the first instance or some of the instances where it went too far and things were already basically at the end, and there was still opportunity to revert it back. It just went past the point, in artifacts themselves probably by concept use divergent laws in order to do their powers. It's just literally artifacts are proof that the world once got to a point that we were utilizing divergent laws in our technology in order to, and pulling from the outside, destabilizing the world. And maybe the 3-year limit isn't that's when the world's going to end. It's like global warming, where we have this sort of threshold where it's these things are going to be irreversible, or there would be no way to bring this world back from where it was if we pass this threshold or something like that. So we need to reset it at that point. We need to destroy everything if we pass that threshold, sort of thing. I say this all with the idea that it's not like Ouroboros is explicitly trying to go out of its way throughout these games to reduce and keep technology on the down low. The church is, though. So it almost feels like, and I might have talked about this before, and I don't remember all my previous theories, I'm gonna be honest. It's been 2 years, as a reminder. It does feel like the church itself is trying to keep technology on the quote-unquote down low, trying to keep it from progressing too much, but also has not really that much of a say in it once the ball gets rolling. And it does sort of feel like the Ouroboros is the society's actions do actually tend to factor into technology rapidly developing as it has. Which could bring the world to that threshold, which could bring the world to a more controllable, workable threshold. Then the other thing to consider is how Ouroboros has, through all this, tried to actually go about, like, what has their goals been in all this? Another thing that I noticed or remembered at least a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Ouroboros' goal on the last one was more about observation of what was happening, and the Grandmaster made a note that the Septarians of Fire and Earth, I believe it was, had disappeared beyond the grasp. And I think I took a note at, like they didn't show her face, but they showed her mouth, and I think she was smiling at the time she said that. So I think their ultimate goal with a lot of these Septarians is to basically make it so that no one can, like maybe bring shit to, like, a breaking point, but via that. Oh, and there's also the thing about, like, Septarians being, like, a trial via ideas. Yeah, okay, maybe that's more it. You have all the, like, Septarian holy beast and stuff like that, and you have the system to keep everyone safe, and basically it's like, shit, if you guys can't handle this at this point, if you can't handle it, you won't be able to handle it on the outside, which Ouroboros, in a way, I think is basically trying to force those trials out before the end of, I think, yeah, that might be it. They're, like, trying to force the trials out in order to see if they need to restart, like, force the restart of the world, or if everyone's going to die, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm starting to confuse myself as I talk myself in circles anyways, and we're nearly at 20 minutes of recording time, so if we're going to do a spoiler talk, I might as well get out my notes from what I had written down and never did the spoiler talk for Cold Steel 4.
No.
Hot damn, I had a very interesting set of notes here from back when I did Cold Steel 4. I never did the spoiler talk, but I, like, wrote down notes. I think this is, like, editing or, like, post the edit, that sort of stuff. I mean, I might as well just go down the list of things, because I might as well talk to them at some point, because they're observations that I made. Last edited October 21st. I wrote other things in this, so I might have added to it afterwards. But the first thing I noted was there's a planet in the Ebon Knight, like, ultimate attack. Like, there's, like, the visual of an actual planet existing, which seems at odds with the idea that the world has a border that you can't go beyond, no matter how far you try to go beyond it. Which I think, especially considering all this would probably imply that you can't go beyond it is less a matter of things existing beyond Zemuria, and probably more a matter of the quote-unquote laws of how this world is governed via Eidos. Literally just say, no, you can't go past these coordinates. You are being instantly teleported back to this thing at this second, to the point where you cannot even perceive going forward. I'm not sure how else to take that, but it's a very interesting visual that's either entirely based on... it's entirely just aesthetic, or it has, like, some significant meaning among all this shit. Because we also do have a night sky, remember that. There are also presumably other planets out there, right? It's not like we have like other stars, we have a sun, we have all that sort of shit. That could all technically be, like, fabricated in some form, but fuck. I feel like I've just jumped head deep. Like, I've been sort of been, like, feeling... Okay, so this is what I feel like right now. I feel like after all this time jumping back into this, I basically put my feet back into the water, and it's like, oh, this is nice. And then just wondering, like, what if I jumped in? And then I jumped in, and then suddenly I'm head deep drowning. And it's like, what did I expect? I don't know how to swim. The next note I made was fire is treated like the spark of life and the soul.
Okay.
Interestingly, I don't know where I made that note from, but it's a note I made somewhere about something at some point, and that Earth is considered like body substance. In my notes, I specifically phrased it as fire is treated like the spark of life and soul. Interestingly, Earth is body substance. The fact that I put interestingly there means I probably literally read the words of it being treated like life, the spark of life, at some point, and took it like that. Which is very interesting. I think that just sort of... if that molds into anything, I think that molds into my, like, sort of... my vaguely remembered, maybe I should rewatch my Theory of Everything video fucking before. Oh, if you haven't seen it, I have a Cold Steel 3. I did, like, a 3-part spoiler talk, and the end of it was my quote-unquote Theory of Everything, where I try to basically speculate down to, like, the pseudoscience level of the worlds. Maybe I should rewatch that, because it's been a fucking while. But I do know the general idea behind it was sort of the idea that all these different elements sort of make up life in some form. The thing I think I take away from that is I think I generally considered the higher elements to be the matters of the soul. The sort of like time, space, mirage element of it. Because if you put those together, time, perception of time, space, perception of space, and mirage, which is just sort of perception in general, you put those together, they're sort of soul-like, right? You could sort of imagine if you had those three put together, you could create sort of a consciousness in some semblance of the imagination. So if fire is being treated as sort of the spark of life and soul, that goes against that. I'm not sure what to make of that outside of that, but it is an interesting thought at the very least. The amount of awakened that Valimar has had, was that awakeners for every divine night or maybe some parallel plane universe thing? I don't know what this is from. Was there like some image, like... I guess there's been discussions in general of Valimar having like a lot more awakeners just over time, right? I think this is a question. Oh yeah, okay, so I think this was a question, because I didn't put a question mark. Fuck, Echo from 2 years ago, be more clear on your thoughts! So Valimar has a ton of awakeners, and I think my sort of like thought process there was, are they meaning that he's just had like a bunch of awakeners over the time period? Which I think that has been the case to some extent, or are they also implying that there might be some like parallel plane universe thing going on where Valimar's like awakener experience goes beyond just this specific world or something like that. Whether he's like aware of it or not, because it's not like he's remembering shit, right? Oh, okay, here it is. Theory. Planes are parallel versions of the world. Each time fate is changed, a new plane is created that deviates. At the very beginning of the chain was when existence fell apart and Gehenna was created. Oh, yeah. That's an interesting thought. I don't know where I got that from. I know, like, the sort of, like, multiple universe stuff. I guess that's probably born from all this discussion of causality and how that, like, how fates vary and stuff like that. Remember, this is 2 years ago. This is Echo from 2 years ago. I'm trying to, like, remember what I was thinking at the time. I'm not even sure, like, I thought it through that much. I might have just had, like, a quick thought and wrote it down. Because I wanted to, like, have it for a spoiler talk and that sort of stuff. Fuck, this is actually gonna be an entire episode that's a spoiler talk. I actually do like that idea, though. All we really know is that, like, there is a demon world out there. So it would be very interesting if you had... So I think in my Theory of Everything, the idea was, like, you had the world sort of, like... Oh, I'm trying to remember. The idea that the world is sort of cut off and sort of isolated here to some extent, with Gehenna being sort of where all the demons and stuff come whenever we have, like, a big thing and they, like, leak through into the world, but that's, like, from the outside. And, like, the proper world, quote-unquote, would be Gehenna itself, right? And then, okay, I guess the idea being that what you're sort of doing is... Oh, I guess this sort of... I didn't watch Loki yet. Okay, so for anyone who's ever watched, like, Loki, even the Marvel MCU, they have a concept where it's like the correct timeline. I forget what they actually call it in that, but it's the idea, like, they try to stop deviations from a timeline to try to keep things on the same general track over the course of, like, so they don't have the connections to the wider multiverse of the Marvel MCU. And the whole idea is that there's, like, a proper timeline that they try to keep to. So if this theory has some legs to it, I would guess that it's a very similar concept to that, where the idea would actually be, and it might, like, go into this, like, causality thing where you, like, they bring Rean and them in here in order to actually, like get stronger so they can, like, get the end result they want. That would keep causality in the timeline in the realm of what it needs to be, right? Of what Eidos is considered proper. The designated fated timeline or something like that. And if that is the case, the end of the story will basically be all the different groups across the different stories basically come together and are like, fuck that, like we get that you're protecting us, but we feel like we're at a point we're strong enough that we can face these challenges, and then it'll be facing those challenges, and etc., etc., etc. I'm very interested if any of this goes in any of the ways that I have ever theorized. But it would be very interesting if, like, because I feel like we've heard about the planes in the Septium Church and stuff like that, but because presumably the guy at the end of Trails from Zero, the Gnosis guy that, like, turned into a demon that we fought and defeated, is basically similar to McBurn. Like, McBurn is basically the same concept in some capacity, right? Where it was a human version and their demon version combining together and getting the perspective of both to some form, with McBurn specifically being sort of leashed to his chained to his human form, which would also hamper his memories until he went to his demon form and allowed those chains to be broken via different laws and that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure it's necessarily like a primary timeline that they got to keep intact sort of thing going on. The causality element of it certainly makes me feel like, maybe. There's certainly an element of that to it, but it definitely feels as though there's a this is how things are supposed to go element of it, and that's why we're being pulled into this Reverie corridor, because someone else is fucking with it, and the computer IDO system is like, okay, well, shit. This is going wrong. Let's pull people in and, like, give them the advantages they need to overcome it, basically, as much as we can. Especially because this place feels like it's brand new, like it was just created. They went out of their way to note that it's not old, and because of the fact that it announced itself to be specifically for this purpose, I feel like it's like an alternative dimension that they specifically pulled us into, and one that can mess with memories, to note, which implies that this system probably would be... This system could be why McBurn's memories were so sealed, and why going back to a demon was able to bring his memories back after being in that form for a while, because he had the divergent laws that broke free of how Eidos' laws would work. That said, I don't know where I got the idea of, like, splintering timelines, making up the different worlds and parallel stuff. There's probably something for that. I think that was probably my leap in that sort of, like, little theory, and why I marked it as a theory. Like, this is the unexplained element of it that, like, brings things together a bit more, maybe. My next note was reverse. People are demons that turned into humans. This is something that I think I noted in the Cold Steel 4 series itself, which I actually think is really likely, based on my speculation and theories, that the world started as, like, Gehenna and the demon forms and stuff like that. And stuff like this world are basically ways for the souls of those demons to live out as humans and not have to be demons anymore, basically. For good or for bad, or whatever. something happened that made that a good thing, right? Next note being lack of alien tech filter concept. I don't know what I meant by that. I might come back to that. I'm sort of blanking hard on what I might have meant by that. Next note, McBurn combined at the same time as the Orbital Revolution, Epstein death. If, I feel like I'd bet on a lost disciple. If it was actually Epstein that was the person that, McBurn was back then. Okay, I get what I'm getting at now. So my theory was like right around like the Orbital Revolution is around when like McBurn showed up, right? So I think the theory was in my head that it could have been like around his death too, where it could have been McBurn is literally Epstein, and it's just like some experiment into divergent laws or whatnot caused him at the time to basically merge with his demon form and make him lose all his memories. So then he gets picked up by Ouroboros, and he's like, what the fuck's going on through all this? But my counter to that in this note was, someone probably would have recognized him by now. Have we ever seen a picture of Epstein? I feel like we haven't. So my alternative theory was that it could be the same idea, but it happened to one of his disciples. And it's just one of the disciples we haven't heard of, or is lost, or never was like in the history books because he had this fate at the time. So that was a theory of mine. He also mentioned better name than Ouroboros, replacing the world with the same thing but with force. Okay, yeah, so that basically ties into what I was thinking before. In terms of like what I was saying before I took out these notes, these sort of like trying to return the world to a state where tech isn't like threatening its safe existence, safe haven anymore. Which leaves that one point that I still don't really... lack of alien tech filter. The only thing... I don't know what I meant by that. The only thing that comes to mind at all is the idea of why does IDEO system not have something built in to filter out all this divergent law stuff and stop it from coming in the first place? If that was what I meant by it, I think the thing that I can think of pretty clearly is, like, we have tons of examples of demons and whatnot showing up during all this time, right? Which presumably would be the same thing, worked by other laws, just coming from the outside, all that sort of fun stuff. Presumably. And then you could also say just that's how the divergent law tech and stuff could be developed, where it's an imperfect system that doesn't keep everything out and things can leak through. And if you push tech enough, you could actually force those cracks open yourself and pull on the divergent law stuff to advance tech even further, because you're basically working outside the realms of physics at that point, right? So this has been... this has actually been about 38 minutes of recording, some downtime for me starting and looking at stuff, but... okay, so this is just going to be an episode. I hope you like me rambling about spoiler stuff. For those of you that haven't had me do it in a long-ass time, I feel like this got my mind back into the deep end of the pool of, like, thinking about Trails lore. It's been a long-ass time since I've really done that, so... this has been fun. I haven't done this in a long time. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. So next time, we'll continue proper. Bye. Drive safely, everyone.